Everyone thinks they know him. The smile, the respect, the apologies after every foul. Football's nicest guy, but here's the truth no one talks about. The most dangerous players are the ones you mistake for harmless. History has proven this over and over again. The moment you think someone is soft, you've already lost. There's an old Korean lesson about war. Never let your enemy understand who you truly are. Because once they do, it's already too late. And somehow, without saying a word, Son Heung-Min turned that principle into a football career. If you enjoyed this story, hit like, it helps more than you think. Subscribe for more deep football stories you won't hear anywhere else. Behind that smile is a childhood that was anything but gentle. His father was once a professional footballer himself until an injury ended everything at 28. 2 years later, Son was born. And from that moment on, football wasn't a game. It was a mission. No academy, no fun sessions, no shortcuts. Before Son was even allowed to shoot a ball, he had to master control, balance, passing, and dribbling. Over and over, again and again. If he disobeyed, more training. If he complained, even more. Son later admitted there were days he trained so long on his weak foot that his vision blurred, the floor turned red, and he could barely stand. It sounded unbelievable, until years later when his father was sued for excessive discipline at Son's own academy, proving those stories weren't exaggerations. They were real. And yet those brutal years forged something rare. Son became truly two-footed, not good with both, genuinely ambidextrous. Former teammates have said even Son himself doesn't know which foot is stronger. That foundation changed everything. In just 2 years of organized football, he was selected for South Korea's elite youth project and sent over 5,000 miles away to Germany. A teenager, alone, barely speaking the language, binge-watching dubbed cartoons just to learn German, while being bullied daily for being different. Out of the group that traveled with him, almost everyone was sent home. Son didn't even get a contract at first. He failed trials in England too. Blackburn, Portsmouth, fear, loneliness, rejection. He was close to disappearing completely. Then came one tournament, one chance, the Under-17 World Cup. Son didn't just play, he announced himself. 3 goals, one from nearly 40 yards, the goal of the tournament. Suddenly, Hamburg realized the mistake they almost made. They rushed him back, and from that point on, there was no stopping it. Youth team to reserves, reserves to first team, all in a single year. The smiling kid everyone underestimated had survived everything thrown at him, and quietly turned himself into one of football's most ruthless finishers. Before anyone even knew his name, he was already outscoring the entire squad. 9 goals in his very first preseason, at one point more than anyone else. Thrown on as a substitute for his own idol, Ruud van Nistelrooy, he didn't just survive, he humiliated elite defenders, tearing through Chelsea and making John Terry and Carvalho look ordinary. And that was only the beginning. On his very first Bundesliga start, he shattered a record that had stood for 39 years, becoming the youngest goalscorer in Hamburg's history. From there, it didn't slow down. It exploded. By January, he was crowned the league's Rookie of the Year. FIFA listed him alongside Neymar and Hazard as one of the most promising players on the planet. Back in Korea, the whispers turned into belief. This wasn't just talent, this was the heir to Cha Bum-kun, the greatest Asian footballer of all time. And then came the numbers that didn't make sense. 18 goals in 9 preseason matches, 18 in 9. But football never let success go unchallenged. Injuries followed. And then came a decision that could have destroyed everything. For a South Korean footballer, that's not just risky, it's terrifying. Military service is unavoidable. 3 years, no shortcuts, no mercy. The only escape? A medal, Olympics or Asian Games. Miss it, and your career can be wiped out overnight. Legends had already fallen that way. Even Asia's Player of the Year had been drafted in his prime. And Son, he didn't even finish high school, meaning he wouldn't be allowed to play football at all during service. This was all or nothing, and he chose football. At first, it worked. He returned late in the season, scored twice, saved Hamburg from relegation, and instantly became a starter. The next year, he announced himself properly, man of the match. 2 goals against Borussia Dortmund, double-digit goals in a top 5 league, something only Cha Bum-kun had ever done before. Big clubs circled, United, Chelsea, Dortmund, even a young Pochettino. Eventually, Leverkusen paid a club record fee to take him. But while he was climbing in Europe, reality hit hard. His teammates won Olympic bronze without him. Military exemption secured. He watched from afar, realizing the door he closed might never reopen. Still, he refused to stop. At Leverkusen, he smashed a hat trick against his former club. On tour in South Korea, 30,000 fans flooded a shopping mall just to see him walk past. Goals kept coming, records kept falling. Champions League qualification secured, World Cup appearances earned. And yet again, when the Asian Games came around, his club refused to release him. And once again, Korea won gold without him, even after 20 goal contributions, even after scoring in the Champions League, even after Tottenham broke records to sign him for 30 million euros, the most ever paid for an Asian player. The clock was still ticking. And on top of everything, he was fighting a deeper battle. In Europe, Asian players were seen as either marketing tools or tireless runners meant to serve others. He was determined to destroy both labels. First, nothing changed. The smile stayed. The manners stayed. And because of that, people kept missing what was right in front of them. It took years before they stopped seeing him as the nice guy and finally unleashed the cold-blooded finisher he was always meant to be. That first season in London was brutal. Even with respectable numbers, he was buried behind Kane, Lamela, and Dele Alli, forced to watch Tottenham's greatest ever title charge mostly from the bench. When he finally did get his chance, in what was basically a title-deciding match, he scored and then watched it all collapse anyway. By the summer, it broke him. At the Olympics, South Korea knocked out Germany, only to crash out against Honduras before medals were even in reach. Cameras caught him collapsed on the pitch, crying uncontrollably, knowing exactly what that loss could mean. When he returned to London, he had already told the club he wanted to leave. Back to the Bundesliga, back to Wolfsburg, anywhere. On deadline day, after Tottenham failed to land either Mané or Zaha, Pochettino begged him to stay. Some insiders later claimed the reason he was benched so often was simple. He never complained. He made it easy. First, nothing changed. The smile stayed. The manners stayed. And because of that, people kept missing what was right in front of them. It took years before they stopped seeing him as the nice guy and finally unleashed the cold-blooded finisher he was always meant to be. That first season in London was brutal. Even with respectable numbers, he was buried behind Kane, Lamela, and Dele Alli, forced to watch Tottenham's greatest ever title charge mostly from the bench. When he finally did get his chance, in what was basically a title-deciding match, he scored and then watched it all collapse anyway. By the summer, it broke him. At the Olympics, South Korea knocked out Germany, only to crash out against Honduras before medals were even in reach. Cameras caught him collapsed on the pitch, crying uncontrollably, knowing exactly what that loss could mean. When he returned to London, he had already told the club he wanted to leave. Back to the Bundesliga, back to Wolfsburg, anywhere. On deadline day, after Tottenham failed to land either Mané or Zaha, Pochettino begged him to stay. Some insiders later claimed the reason he was benched so often was simple. He never complained. He made it easy. That season, he delivered 21 goals and 8 assists, almost a goal contribution per game. He outperformed his expected goals by over 100%, statistically the deadliest finisher in England. And how was he rewarded? In Tottenham's biggest match of the year, an FA Cup semi-final against Chelsea, he was played at left back. Left back. It's embarrassing in hindsight. He won more Player of the Month awards than anyone else in the league, yet still couldn't shake the feeling that if he'd been trusted earlier, if he'd been played centrally, that second-place finish might have been a title. By his third year, the minutes increased, but only because he was pushed wider. By then, football wasn't even his biggest worry. The World Cup loomed. Then came the Asian Games, his final chance at a medal and military exemption. Miss it, and before the next tournament, he'd be 28 with no escape. The World Cup offered one iconic moment, scoring in the historic win over Germany, but Korea still went out in the group stage. A month later, everything came down to one tournament. After a disastrous loss to Malaysia forced Korea into the tougher side of the bracket, he scored the winner to reach the knockouts. In the quarterfinals against a red-hot Uzbekistan side with 13 goals in 4 games, he assisted within 5 minutes, watched his team fall behind, assisted again to force extra time, and survived by a single penalty in the 118th minute. That was how close his entire career came to ending. The semifinal went smoother, another assist in a 3-1 win over Vietnam, but the final was pure torture. Against Japan, rivals. No goals for 90 minutes, extra time. And then, when everything was on the line, he assisted twice to secure a 2-1 victory. Gold medal, military exemption, freedom. Overnight, every club that had been waiting suddenly came knocking. Bayern, United, Liverpool. And yet, against all logic, he chose to stay. He opened the next season with a Messi-like solo goal against Chelsea, then went on a ridiculous run. 19 goal contributions in 16 matches, capped off by a goal against Dortmund to put Tottenham on the brink of a Champions League quarterfinal. With Kane injured, he took over completely, scoring 3 goals across 2 legs against Guardiola's Manchester City to send Spurs through on-away goals and into their first semi-final since 1962. Europe finally had no choice but to notice. Club Player of the Season, Ballon d'Or nomination. Even losing the Champions League final couldn't erase what he'd done. And still, many saw him as just Kane's sidekick. That changed when Pochettino was sacked and Mourinho arrived. Mourinho flipped everything. Son moved central. Kane dropped deeper. The results were instant. He tore through Burnley's entire team to score one of the greatest goals the league has ever seen, winning the Puskas Award as Mourinho dubbed him Sonaldo Nazario. The pandemic paused everything, but not his momentum. He returned, dragged Tottenham into Europe, saved Mourinho's job, and overtook Kane to win Player of the Season again. What followed was an absurd arms race. 40 goal contributions for him, 50 for Kane, a league record 14 goals assisted between the two. Team of the Year, FA Cup Final. And somehow, Tottenham still finished 7th, then sacked Mourinho 6 days before the final, sabotaging themselves completely. So once again, he responded the only way he knew how. Under Nuno and then Conte, he went nuclear. From 9 goals behind Mohamed Salah, he surged back to steal the Golden Boot, 12 goals in his final 10 matches. Dragging Spurs into the Champions League yet again and claiming a historic 3rd Player of the Season award. The fact that he did this in the Harry Kane era should tell you how special of a player he is, but the fact that he's called the Harry Kane era should tell you how underrated he is as well. To make matters worse, the season after he'd go on kind of a dry streak as Kane not only quickly matched his record, but left to Bayern once it was confirmed they would not qualify for European football, giving up on Tottenham and taking the easiest route towards some silverware. Now alone, Son tried to explain that he'd been playing at 60% fitness all season and able to get surgery to treat an hernia that left him in constant pain. But even after recovering and being handed the captain's armband, he struggled to keep Tottenham afloat. After all, it was his first time playing without Kane in 9 years, and yet another manager had just taken over the club. But regardless of any of that, he kept pushing, still hitting 27 goal contributions in the Premier League alone, winning an unbelievable 23 points for his team as they narrowly missed out on Champions League qualification, though this time it may have been fate. The next year, as Son was hit with injury after injury, missing 17 matches in total, Tottenham would collapse, ending up 17th in the table by the time the season was over, just 1 place over the relegation zone. With Son unable to help his team, either because his own body failed him or because he was outcasted onto the sidelines, he set everything to be one of the most depressing seasons of his career. But one way or another, the same team who nearly got relegated made it all the way into the Europa League final, and though Son himself was only able to come in 23 minutes from the end, they won it. They actually won a trophy. Not one Tottenham fan was able to hold back the tears seeing Son lift that trophy after so many years watching him cry. He had done what Kane never could. And though obviously he isn't one for gloating, when they asked him what he felt about Kane winning the Bundesliga, he replied that they're different trophies. And we all know what that meant. Whether he'll admit it or not, Son is now Tottenham's all-time greatest. That same broken team somehow clawed its way to the Europa League final. Son, still not fully fit, could only enter with 23 minutes left. But this time, it didn't matter. Tottenham won. They actually won. And as Son lifted the trophy, there wasn't a single Spurs fan who didn't feel it. Years of tears, heartbreak, loyalty, and silence finally pouring out in one moment. He had done what Harry Kane never could. He didn't celebrate it loudly. That's not who he is. When asked about Kane winning the Bundesliga, he simply said they were different trophies. And everyone understood exactly what he meant. Whether he ever says it or not, the truth is already written. Son Heung-Min isn't just a Tottenham legend. If you enjoyed this story, hit like. It helps more than you think. Subscribe for more deep football stories you won't hear anywhere else.